And now I'd like to welcome you to today's Leadership and Development webinar on Leadership Excellence for Senior Management. Today's webinar will be presented by Executive Leadership Coach and Professional Development Consultant, Mr. Brian Ackles. Brian, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Kelly. Wonderful introduction as always, and I'm very happy to be here. It's a beautiful day where I'm located. Well, it's kind of gray, but it's a good day to talk about leadership. So let's jump right in and talk about what we're going to be talking about for the next 45 minutes or so. So we have a few goals for this session. So we're going to look at some of the key traits needed by senior managers in leadership. Look at some of the key areas to focus on to develop your management skills, both for yourself and for your organization. And also look at the importance and recognize the importance of navigating organizational politics. And we'll save that for close to the end of the webinar. So let's jump right in. And the key thing for me about leadership, and most writers agree with this, is leadership is a service. Your job as a leader is to enable other people to be successful. And the key word is this: you're enabling others to be successful. And we'll talk more about this as we move along. So you're enabling your team to be successful. You're enabling your organization to be successful. And you're also enabling your customer to be successful, whether that's internal or external. So your leadership is an enablement for all of these elements to be successful. Part of the ability to create success or to enable people to be successful, and we'll focus back just on your team, is you need to get to know the people that you're working with. You need to know who they are on a personal level, and you need to know who they are on a professional level. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to be their best friends and that you need to dive into their personal histories and personal backgrounds, but you need to know people's likes and desires. You need to understand what their career directions are, what their future plans are, what their family plans are, what their life goals are, what their professional goals are, and how those merge and how those overlap. So once you get a feeling for who these people are, what people want, what their likes and desires are, you can that helps inform your decisions about how to guide people and how to get the best out of people and how to get people to give the best of what they have for the organization. So when for instance, if you have a challenge that you're trying to address, you can look around and see the types of people that might be best suited to deal with that kind of challenge. Also, having some background and exposure to the type of work that your people are doing is a definite benefit, because you can empathize with people, you can empathize with some of the challenges and struggles that they may be going through. Now, I want to stress here that it is not really necessary for you to be the expert in your field, to be the expert in, say, if you're a technology manager. You don't need to be an expert in the technology, but you have to have a fundamental understanding and grounding about what you're talking about and what the team is working through. So how do you best understand people and learn about people? And this is about developing empathy. And the best thing to do is to just simply listen to people. And listening is a real art form. It's being able to concentrate on what somebody is saying without feeling the need to form a response. Just to concentrate and listen to what they're saying. And listen for what people's underlying needs are. Sometimes the words that people are saying don't quite capture what they're trying to tell you. So look for facial expressions, look for sort of hidden meanings, if you will. Empathy becomes particularly important when you're dealing with people who seem to have a different belief than you, or a different viewpoint from you, or even a different viewpoints from each other. So it seems to be that the further people are apart in how they view things, it's easier to see that person as an enemy. And this is something which we're trying very hard to get away from. People with different viewpoints, people with different beliefs, bring a dynamic to the team and bring a challenge to the team, which is refreshing, and it's something to be cherished. You don't want to have people all thinking exactly the same way, right? Beneath any disagreement between people and between yourself and between team members is about people who actually are also looking to be respected. Having a respectful disagreement with somebody can be very empowering. Having a disrespectful agreement with somebody can be very damaging. So think about this as with your interactions with people, with your interactions with your team, but also in looking at your team's interaction amongst themselves. And always remember that leadership is not about winning or losing. You never win as a leader, you never lose as a leader. Your staff is the people that you're serving. So you're always trying to view things from their perspective, and you're trying to see how can you do better so that they can do a better job. So one thing that you often hear people say is that, oh, that so and so, or she was born or he was born to be a leader. Well, there's no such thing as being born to leadership. People learn how to become good leaders. People are taught how to become good leaders. Some people might find it easier to learn some things than others, as some people find it easier to learn complex mathematical formulas. Some people find it easier to create great art. So there is some portion of that as well, but you can still learn the skills to be a good leader. One thing about leadership is knowing what you're trying to get people to accomplish. And understanding what you're trying to get people to do requires that you sit down and take some time to plan and work with the organization to make sure that you've got a good roadmap that you're able to follow, that you're then able to present to your team, so that you've got a way to guide them and to bring them along the path that the organization and that you need them to be on as well. And one way of doing that is using this tool called backcasting. And backcasting is look at the steps you need to take to get to this future desired state. So you start off by saying, okay, in a suitable time frame, if you're looking at a 1, 2, 3, 4-year planning cycle, whatever that is, define where you want to be. What is this future desired state that you want to be in? If you're, I'll give you an example. So you're currently hold 20% market share in a particular niche market, and you have organizational strategic plans to grow that number to take double that number to 40% in 3 years. So you know that in 3 years you want to have 40% of the market, and 40% of the market means that you're going to be looking for growth opportunities to grow the market. You're going to be looking for opportunities to particularly excel and get people to change to your technology or your service. So you're defining in as much detail as you can where you want to be, and then you start looking into seeing what steps you need to take to actually get there. And you start creating all these steps, and you start working backwards, and you get to the point where you're going to say, okay, what is my first step? And all the time you're working with your team to do this. So you're saying, okay, so we need to get to this place. You've worked with the team, they understand the strategy. Now you start working with them to figure out how you're going to get there. So this is called backcasting, and it's a very, very powerful planning tool. One of the things about working with your team, and particularly when you're getting into areas like backcasting and planning, etc., is you need to be able to earn and maintain the trust of your team. Now, we've all had really good managers. I'm sure that we've all had some managers which may have had some room for improvement. Some of us may have had the unfortunate micromanagers. I know that I've had some situations where it's been an incredibly micromanaged environment, which was extraordinarily challenging to work in. But you earn the trust of your team by not micromanaging. You certainly earn the trust of your team not only by delegating tasks, but empowering people to do the jobs that you've asked them to do. And you're delegating and empowering people to do work that they are capable of doing. Now, capability and someone being capable of doing something means that they have at least the basic skills. They may have hidden talents that they may not see but that you do. So again, you're giving people the ability and the empowerment to do something they can succeed. Right? You're celebrating people's successes. Right? When somebody does something well, when something is accomplished, when a major milestone is met, when something is delivered above and beyond what was expected, celebrate the success. And celebrate the success appropriately. Say thank you to people. A simple thank you is a huge motivator for people. And one thing about a leader and one thing about leadership, and if you step back and look at the people that you consider to be leaders, is leaders are people that up to follow. They trust you. They feel that you know where you're going and you know what you're doing, and they know that you've got their back. So that if something does go a bit sideways, you're not going to throw them under the bus. You're going to work with them. You're going to find a way through the issue, and you're going to move forward together as a team. And this is about trust. The thing about earning trust is a process, and it's like everything else. It takes time. It takes you earn the trust of your team by trusting them first. And you have to be very careful not to break that trust, because once you break the trust, it becomes that much more difficult to earn it back again. We're not going to talk on that really anymore today, but it is something to think about. As this slide says, honesty really is the best policy. If somebody asks you a question and you don't know the answer, the easiest thing to do is to say, listen, I really don't know. I have some ideas, and what do you think? How can we work together to figure this out? Or give me a couple of days, give me some time, I'll research it and I'll get back to you. Trying to give somebody information that you're making up on the fly doesn't really work very well. If people hear that you are answering something clearly, they will respect you. They will trust you, and they will ask you other questions, and they will respect and respond to your answers. If you answer somebody, well, I kind of think maybe, well, we could possibly perhaps go down that road, then they're going to know that you really don't have a clear understanding of what the answer is or where you need to be going with that. So again, if you don't know, say you don't know, find out. Let people know what's going on. Be honest in everything that you're doing with people. And if somebody asks you something and it's a confidential matter with the organization, and you know the answer, but you're unable to tell them, you can say simply, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to share that information with you at this time. When I can, I will let you and the rest of the team know. Again, that's an honest answer. And you're telling people that I can't tell you. Here's the reason why I can't tell you. I'll let you know as soon as I know. Right? And again, it's about being honest. So, as a leader or as a manager, you have to perform even when you're not at your best. Today, I'm at the trailing edge of a bad cold I've been fighting for about a week. Last week, I had to chair a working group meeting in a remote location, and I tell you, the last thing I wanted to do was travel for about 2 hours, spend 2 hours or more in a meeting, and then travel for another 2 hours to get back home. But however, you have to do these things, and you have to step up. And as a leader, that's something which you just have to be on about. When you do things, right, as a leader, and we know the one truth about effective leadership is when things go right, the biggest thing you want to make sure you do is deflect any praise that you get to your team members. But when things go wrong, remember, it's your fault. It is something that you take the responsibility for. I'm not going to say take the blame. You take the responsibility for, and you work with your team so that whatever the challenge was, whatever the problem was, it gets addressed and you move forward together. You don't blame your team. You take responsibility because that's your job as a leader. And that's what leadership is. Remember, leadership is that you're out front and people are following you. So when things go right, it's because of the people supporting you. And when things go wrong, of course, it's because you're out in front and something has gone wrong. You take responsibility, you move forward. So there are times, of course, when you're dealing with people when energy can be a bit low, motivation might be a bit low, a project might be dragging on, there might have been problems and challenges, and goodness knows what, customers can be getting a bit antsy. Maybe you've had a challenging meeting with another group and everybody's energy levels are low. Well, it's incumbent on you as a leader to motivate them. Motivate people, provide guidance, provide inspiration, remind people why you're doing things, create and increase that level of energy within your team. Right? That's either to take on a new project or to continue on to finish an existing project. Sometimes in a longer project, it's very hard to maintain the energy to get through to the end. And 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way through the project, people might be getting tired of doing this. It's like, when are we going to see the end of this thing? Well, you remind them that they're going to see the end of this thing in, X number of while. Look at all the great things that we've accomplished so far. Look at the things that we've got left to do. They're exciting and they're extraordinarily important for the customer. So, let's get this going. Let's get this finished and let's do the best that we can do. You're providing inspiration. You're reminding people about what they've accomplished, what they've got left to do, and what the end result is that you were trying to achieve. You're always feeding that information to people so that they feel motivated and they feel inspired to do the work that that they can do, because you've given them appropriate delegation and appropriate empowerment and tools to do the job. As with all things in management and all things in leadership, there are issues about how people communicate. And we're going to touch on an area called transactional analysis. And when people interact with each other, they tend to fall into some preformed scripts. And these are driven on how they experienced authority, right? How people experience authority when they were growing. And it really comes down to there's three primary styles of behavior in social interactions, and that of the child, that of the parent, and that of the adult. And depending on how these styles interact, getting into these scripts can allow people to engage in sort of a black hole of behavior, which creates a cycle of conflict which never seems to end. And transactional analysis, it looks at these typical interactions and looks at ways to break these cycles of conflict and break these cycles of interaction. So the idea here is to change the script. There are two types of sort of transactional types within this whole process. One is called complementary, and one is called cross reactions, cross transactions. So complementary transactions are transactions where you have parent to child and adult to adult. So these complementary transactions reinforce behavior. So let's talk a little bit about parent and child transactions. So let's get to complementary transaction. You are the leader, you are the parent. Your team member is the child. So the parent tells the child what to do. The child does it. The child does it because the parent tells them what to do, right? But if the child makes a mistake, the parent corrects the child. And I'm not going to get into, corporal punishment and all that sort of stuff, doesn't matter. But it's a very I tell you do relationship, right? It's the parent and the child. As opposed to an adult to adult, where things are discussed, things are, as two adults, similar requirements, similar background, similar needs for understanding, you're explaining, it's an agreement between two adults to get something done. You're not telling somebody to do something, you're exploring the need, you're exploring together what has to be done, how it's going to be done, and that person agrees that they're going to do it and they're going to deliver it in a particular way. You provide any support and aid that you need to do as a leader. So what you do when you try to switch the script, if you see you're in if you see a parent to child interaction going on, you try and flip it to a parent to adult conversation, and that can flip into an adult to adult conversation, right? You change to the adult to force it out of that parent child mode into a better mode of adult to adult. You're trying to cross the transaction. You're trying to cross it out of parent and child, and you're trying to cross it into adult. There's a lot more involved in this, but this gives you an idea of how you want to start changing the scripts with people instead of telling people what to do, or if you see people telling each other what to do, try and engage them on that adult to adult behavior, that adult to adult transaction mode. And of course, we talked about this before, trust your team. When you lead others, they will rise and fall to the expectations that you set for them. So if you set low expectations for your team members, I guarantee you that they will rise to that low expectation, or alternatively, they will fall to that low expectation. If you set high expectations for people, and high expectations doesn't mean that you expect people to do things that they can't accomplish, but high expectations that you expect excellent work, that you expect them to be able to do the things that you know that they can do. People will tend to rise to that challenge if you trust them, and if they know that you support them, and that they know that they can come to you if they're having a challenge. They will rise to that expectation, and it is about trust. We talked about celebrating success, and no success is too small. Everything that somebody does that's a good job, requires some acknowledgement of that it's a good job. Richard Branson is noted for creating companies where people work and take ownership and are very empowered. And his bottom line is praise makes a good leader. And cultivate this culture where people recognize each other's successes. You want to hear somebody from your team, saying to one of their teammates, "Great job! What you did on X on that presentation, I was really impressed. Really appreciate that. Great job! Really learned something from it." When you hear your team celebrating success amongst themselves, you know that you've created that culture with your team where people feel comfortable in doing that. When you see somebody doing something, a simple thank you is a very, very powerful motivator, and a very powerful way of just recognizing somebody's success. And celebrating success, one last thing I'll say about this is you tailor it to the individual. Not everybody likes to be publicly praised. Some people just like a quiet, appreciate that, thanks very much. Anything else you need, let me know. That's often enough. So being a leader means having a team. Having a team means you need to build your team. When you build your team, you also need to reinforce your team. And this is a constant piece of work that as a leader, that's your job to do. Teams do not happen on their own. It would be really cool if they did, but we still don't have self-driving cars that work terribly well. Well, they work okay, but as happened with Uber yesterday, that still have some bugs to work out. We don't have self-driving teams yet either. We still need people involved, and that's a great thing for all of us. Leaders have to work at this. So there are a number of ways, and then there's a whole bunch of different ways of looking at team structures and what makes a team. There's the team, there's the model of team development, which we won't get into, the forming, storming, norming, and performing model. But there's also the idea of understanding the types of roles that people have on a team. And there's been a lot of research done into this over the years, and Dr. Meredith Belbin identified that there are 9 roles that people need to have to make a balanced and effective team. And the 9 roles listed here, the plant, monitor, evaluator, coordinator, resource investigator, implementer, completer, finishers, team workers, shapers, and the specialists. So I'll just go through these very quickly. So the plant. So the plant is the person who comes up with new ideas and new approaches to doing things. And the monitor evaluator is the person whose role is really to look at that and analyze the options. The coordinator is typically the person that acts as the chairperson. The resource investigator is the person who explores outside the organization, and they know everybody. They have contacts and access to people everywhere. The implementer is the person or the people who put ideas into action. The completer finishers, they're the ones that make sure that everything is completed thoroughly and in a timely manner. These are the ones you want at the ends of your project. Make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. The shapers are the people that challenge the team to perform. Leaders are typically shapers. They have some part of this within their team profile makeup. And then the last of the roles is a specialist. And more as we get into this ever-changing world of technology and business, we see more and more roles for specialists within coming in to provide a very particular specialist piece of information or specialist piece of work for the team. Now, the thing with team roles is, unless you have the ideal number of people on your team, so any multiple of 9, then you're going to have people who are playing one or more roles. And you know, the whole idea with the Belbin research is that there's the ability to manage more than one characteristic. People have a primary characteristic and people have a secondary characteristic. So the best team has a balance of roles within the team. You don't want to have a team of all one type or all sort of leaning towards one type. You need to have this cross-section of roles available to you. So people will play multiple roles, that's fine, and that's all well and good, and people should play multiple roles because, again, none of us are all of one thing. We have a primary thing that we like, that we stand up to, and we have secondary characteristic, a secondary, or many secondary characteristics that we can bring to a team as well. So as you're building your team and you're starting to understand people's team roles, and you can look at the Belbin website for more information on this. But as you're building up these team roles, and as you're working with people, and you're guiding the team, and you're getting people working towards this future desired state that you've backcasted yourself into, you're constantly coaching and mentoring your team and making sure that you're keeping people on the right track, and you're working with them and you're mentoring them to help them through their careers. So we stated earlier that your results are achieved through the people you lead, but really the reality is it's the results that you achieve is really only due to the work you put in to developing the people you lead. And again, your success is based on the success of others. And the success of others is only based on how well you work with them and how well you're able to develop them. And it's not that you personally have to take ownership for developing every aspect of this person's life and their job and their career, but you are the enabler of this. We go back to the beginning of this webinar. You're enabling people's success. Right? You're enabling them to have the ability to take on new challenges, to learn new skills, to take the training, to attend trade shows, to go to conferences, to get the exposure within the organization. There's thousands of ways for people to learn. There's thousands of ways for people to be coached and mentored. But you're enabling all of these things to happen, and that is your job. Right, that as your job as a leader, as a senior manager, right, you need to develop the people so that they can step up. So eventually they're going to become the leaders and senior managers as well. And again, not everybody wants to be a manager, not everybody wants to be a leader in the formal sense, but you can have technical leaders as well. And technical leadership still requires that same idea that they're enabling others to achieve technically as well. Right. So again, it's not just about pure management and pure technology and what have you. It's about a mindset, about enablement and coaching and mentoring. So coaching moments happen all the time, and you look for these coaching moments. People always will have questions, right? When your staff have questions, sometimes you have to answer the question. Let's be realistic. If somebody asks you a question and there is only one answer, answer the question. You don't have to turn everything into a coaching moment. But if it's a question that can engender a discussion, so enter into a discussion with people, discuss what the issue is, discuss what the background of the problem is, look at what the impacts could be, look and brainstorm about what different solutions might be available, how the situation could best be managed, and start getting people to think about their responses, and getting people to start to critically think about their responses, not to just give you an answer to a question, but to have them provide a thoughtful response to a comment. And that's a very different thing than an answer to a question, right? Because if a thoughtful response means that they're able to say, well, I can see that, if we did this, the possible outcomes are, A, B, and C. Now, the challenge with this is if we do it that way, then there's also the possibility of this happening. On the other hand, if we took this other option, then, we sort of reduce the risk of the bad thing happening. We might not get everything we want. I'm not going to go any further with that example, but you get the idea. People get that idea of thoughtful response, critical thinking. And that starts to build confidence because they know that they can share this with you and that you become a sounding board for their ideas. And again, you've got experience, you've got work experience, you've got life experience, so you can help guide them down that path as well. But again, I'll come back to an earlier point. If you don't know the answer to something and you don't know what you're talking about, don't be very honest about this. Say, I don't know the answer to this. Maybe we should bring somebody else into this conversation as well that has more knowledge and more expertise in this particular area. So again, look for these coaching moments, and they happen all the time, and they happen in meetings. I wouldn't suggest you coach somebody during the meeting, but make a note of something that happened in the meeting. Have a discussion with somebody outside. It can happen in a casual conversation first thing in the morning. It can happen over lunch. It doesn't matter. Look for these opportunities to talk to people. So again, we come back to managers are made, and managers are not, are not born. Well, we are born, but we just need to be sort of molded along the way. It's a skill set, and if you're as a leader, you're transitioning and you're always looking for people to move into the management roles as well. And if you're transitioning somebody into that role, you really need to take the time to develop that person and train that person so that they have at least the skills to become a manager, and that you invest the time when they become a manager to coach and mentor them as they are a manager. They still need coaching and mentoring as well. Failure to do that, you will end up with a really bad manager, and you will end up with poorly managed teams that won't be performing as well as they need to be. And I'll be as blunt as that. You need good managers to manage good teams. The better the manager, the better the team. That's the basic reality of it. So you learn by being managed well, right? I've had I've been very fortunate in my career, and I continue to be very fortunate working with some really excellent managers and excellent executives. And I learn every day by watching how other people do it and interacting with different people. If you've been managed well, you tend to look for that. Effective managers are responsive. Effective managers invest time and invest energy into employee development, and they're personally accountable for what goes on. They speak clearly and politely to colleagues, customers, and clients. Clearly and politely. You don't go down the road of using a lot of jargon. You don't go down the road of obfuscating what people, what you're trying, what the message is. You're just clear. You say what you mean. And you hold yourself and your employees to high standards. Now, holding yourself and your employees to high standards requires something very, very fundamental. That, one, you can articulate what those standards are, and two, that your employees know what those standards are as well, so that they know what they're being held to account for. We emulate good managers. We look at, and I encourage people. I encourage the managers that work for me to look at the best practices of good managers that they've had in the past. Whether it's, and it won't always be within the organization. You have multiple careers, and they've worked for multiple organizations. And if you're developing and working to develop people into managers, have them develop lists of qualities and behaviors that are memorable to them. As you're working with them and as you're going through, career planning sessions with them, and you're talking about management and you're mentoring, you're reminding them of, these qualities and behaviors that they felt were really good from their past managers. So they can, you can remind them that, this is how they should be acting, and this is how they said that they wanted to be acting. You're empowering new managers. So if you bring a new manager in, make sure that you're giving them some defined authority so that they know what they are responsible for. Right? New managers need to learn, right? They need the leeway. Now, you're going to be spending more time with new managers than you would with someone that you've been managing for a while, right? However, you still need to give new managers the freedom to manage the team and to learn, right? They need to be encouraged to take initiative, to voice opinions, and you need to provide them with very positive support. Not micromanaging, not telling them how to be a manager, but providing them sort of the guidelines and the boundaries of what they're supposed to be managing and what they're supposed to be doing. Encourage people for peer networking, give them the opportunities to learn from others, formal opportunities, informal opportunities, meet regularly, formal opportunities, which is, planned events, conferences, meeting other managers at, management seminars, the organization. We have a quarterly management meeting where I currently have a full-time role, and these managers meetings are actually quite enlightening because we get a chance to see the different managers and supervisors who we work with somewhat, but we don't get to work closely with them, and you get a different feel for what's going on in their parts of the organization. Intercompany and intra-company. So conferences are good ways for people to learn from others as well. We talk about the CARE model, which is teaching each other requires some basic. So collaborate with people, set ground rules, be fair in your assessments of other people, use objective means, acknowledge your team, and teach your team to acknowledge each other's work, teach them how to deliver feedback, so that's the C and the A. Respect for each other, teach your team how to show respect by using proper greetings. A simple hello. Instead of, hey, how you doing? Or maybe, hey, how you doing is fine for your team, right? But whatever is appropriate for your organization. And make sure, and this is critical, that everybody is seen as being equal in value and contribution in what they bring. And as we go into a hugely multi-generational workforce, understand that age is not a factor. Because somebody is a Gen Z and they're new in the job, now they bring some interesting new ideas and new ways of working because of how they have been exposed to the world through social media, through the news. For people like me, I'm coming in the middle of the boomer generation. We learn social media after the fact, but we learn our views of the world in a much different way. Everybody brings something unique to the team. Age is not a factor in this. As I said, we get to the end, and we'll talk a little bit about organizational politics. This is the reality of life. Politics is a fact of organizational life. It has no, politics are not inherently good or inherently evil. Politics define how decisions get made in an organization, and political power does not follow the defined hierarchy within an organization. The most powerful person in the organization may or may not be the president and CEO. It may be somebody else entirely, or certainly at different levels, it may not be the person at the titled head of that part of the hierarchy. You need to understand the landscape of where you work, right? You need to know how decisions are made and that those decisions can be influenced. By stating that you are not involving your politics is a political statement. And I'll let you ponder that for a second. If you state you're not in politics, you're not involving yourself in the politics of the organization, you're making a political statement. Being politically aware means being understanding how decisions are made and acting ethically to influence decisions that support the goals of the organization is the reality of good politics. And not even good politics, just the reality of politics. And the key here is acting ethically to influence the decisions that support the goals of the organization. Right? It's not about acting ethically to support the goals that you have as an individual. Right? You're there to work for the organization. You're there to work towards the good of the organization. So this is how politics is important to the organization. If you recognize that it exists, people gain access to and support for their ideas, and leaders obtain support for their ideas through lobbying. Lobbying is a way of providing information and making people aware of what you're trying to achieve. You build political support for change. Change in any organization, and this is a much bigger topic than we're going to get into, but change is hard in any organization. And building support for change is a huge and key enabler of change being effective in an organization. And all organizations are in change, are in a constant state of change. Anytime you deliver a new product or service, that's a change in the organization. Anything you do in an organization involves change to a greater or lesser degree. You need to understand and leverage your own political awareness and the political awareness of the organization, and that helps you move from being reactive and reacting to somebody else's agenda to being proactive and being able to guide the agenda and be able to deal more appropriately with change. And this is being politically savvy. And this is not being nasty and not being, a horrible politician, etc. This is the reality of politics is about information, and it's about leverage, and it's about creating awareness for why things are being done. So you take time to know your organization and build strong alliances. Right? These are the benefits. You build a positive workplace, you foster employee collaboration, and you build increased employee satisfaction and performance. And you do all of this by your team will see success for what they're doing because they see that you're able to move things through the organization. Your team is able to deliver what they say they're going to deliver because you're able to provide that environment for them to work in. That's going to help everybody's performance in there. It's going to help their satisfaction. Okay, so briefly on politics, back to big picture thinking. There's a key part of senior manager's role is to build this shared vision. And this is close to where we're going to end this. Most people evolve through your careers in the idea of a lumberjack story. So I'll review this very quickly. So the lumberjack goes into the woods. Guy goes into the woods and sees a bunch of lumberjacks working and asks the lumberjack, what they're doing and what they're doing. What they're doing. The first lumberjack says, "Yeah, I'm cutting down trees." The second lumberjack says, "Yeah, I'm being the absolute best, most efficient and effective tree cutter that I can be." And the third lumberjack responds, "Well, I'm helping to build that new community over there." And I'll let you investigate this story more at your leisure. But the big picture here is that you're trying to build the community. You're not trying to be the very best at a particular task. You're trying to look to that future desired state, and these are the steps along the way that you need to. So, last words. You are leaders and you are senior managers in your organization. You are absolutely the key to your organization's success today and in the future. And in the future, even when you're not there, you'll still be the key to their success because you will have built people and you will have mentored and coached a leader to take your place when you move on. People will in turn lead the great teams that you have created. You are a teacher You are a guide. You are a role model, a mentor, and a servant. Right? This is your job. It is a huge undertaking to be an effective senior leader. And it takes time, it takes energy, and it's extraordinarily rewarding, and it's extraordinarily satisfying. It creates a tremendous amount of satisfaction for you. It's for myself. It is. I find nothing better, no greater reward or win in my career than to see somebody perform beyond their perceived expectations, or to take the role that they never thought they were able to get. I encourage you continue to learn, and absolutely know this, that you will be great. And with that, I will say thank you. And if you have any questions, let me know, and we've got some time to answer them.
Thank you so much, Brian. That was a wonderful presentation. If anyone has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat now, and we will address those over audio. Also want to remind everyone that a recording link from today's session will be sent out later today in case you missed anything or would like to pass it on to any colleagues to join. And another reminder that we do offer these leadership and development webinars every month. So they are free for you to attend. So visit our website at newhorizons.com and you can register for any upcoming sessions. I believe the schedule is up to date through June or July. So please visit our website, and there you will also find our Center for Leadership and Development updated courses, dates, and pricing. So visit our website at newhorizons.com for all the information you need. And it looks like we do have one question, Brian. For team roles, can you describe more what the plant is?
Sure. So the plant is typically the role in a team where the person is, they have the new ideas. They're the people that come up with the creators, the innovators, if you will. They're the ones that typically generate the new ideas. Now, plants come up with lots of really great ideas, but they're not necessarily the best people to follow through the implementation of those ideas. But they can come up with all kinds of great ideas, and then it's almost like handing them off to the monitor evaluator role that then analyzes the options, and then the implementer role that actually starts implementing the ideas that the plant comes up with.
Okay, great. And then what are your thoughts on how to deal with a non-transparent, scared manager?
Sorry, could you repeat that? I had a bit of interference.
Oh, sure. Just some ideas on how someone can deal with a non-transparent or scared manager.
Ooh, yeah. So I can only assume that if a manager is non-transparent or scared, that there's something in the organization or something in this person, the way that they're being managed, which is driving that behavior. And again, you look for the drivers of behavior in anybody. So if a manager is being non-transparent, it's a tricky situation for staff, because they need to understand that their manager is supporting them, and if they don't know what the manager is feeling or what the manager, that can be very, very difficult, and that might depending on the relationship and depending on the power relationship within the team with the manager, it might be worthwhile having a frank discussion to say, what's happening, ask questions about the organization, try and get more information. If it's suitable, try and find out what's going on in the organization from other measures. That's a very tough question to answer without a lot more background.
All right, thanks, Brian. It looks like that is going to wrap up our questions and our session for today. So thank you again, Brian. Always love having you join us presenting these webinars on behalf of New Horizons.
My absolute pleasure, and we'll talk again next month.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I will be in touch later today with the recording link and copy of the slide deck. That will conclude today's session. You may now log off. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great day.